Today I'm going to be editing the bellabeautebar Secret Garden palette down to a more manageable size for me. I really don't like large eyeshadow palettes, and that's not to say I don't like the quality of this formula. It's not to say that I think bellabeautebar made a bad eyeshadow palette. That don't you take what I say and run with it, because that's not what I said. 25 eyeshadows is pretty overwhelming to me. I don't think I'm going to use all the shades. I'm going to favor some of the shades. So it's important to me whenever I make the decision to buy an eyeshadow palette that I feel like I'm going to get a lot of use out of most of the palette. And when I say most, I mean like one shade might be a shade that I won't want to use, but like if I want to use the rest of them, that's a good call. What I'm going to be doing in today's video is I'm going to send you to some overhead footage where I take these 25 shades and I boil it down to a smaller eyeshadow palette, and then what I do is I apply my new palette to my eyes. So if you are familiar with my channel, this isn't an eye for an eye. That's actually coming with this palette and the Sigma Kohl Neutrals. I'm going to do it as like a double feature in one video. So that's not what this is. This is more of an activity of being realistic about how much eyeshadow I use and like what that would look like. Also, if you are duping the palette, maybe if you're duping the palette, you don't need to dupe all 25 shades. You can just dupe the vibe, as Hannah Louise Poston says. So it's not about getting exact matches. It's not about making it the exact same size. It's about what would the shadows that would make me do looks inspired by this palette, what would those look like? What would a palette of that look like? Is it 8 eyeshadows? Is it 10 eyeshadows? Is it 12 eyeshadows? How many shadows am I going to edit it down to? Well, you're just going to have to watch the overhead footage to find out. So here is the Secret Garden palette. When I'm thinking about condensing this palette, I want to get down to like 10 or 12 shades, because when I look at this, I'm overwhelmed, and I know I'm not going to use a lot of the shades in here regularly if I were to keep this. I'm typically drawn to neutral shades, so obviously this top row is like very, very lovely to me, but I want to keep like the essence of the palette as I navigate this, because if I were to like make my own version of this palette, I would still want it to challenge me a little bit and have me go out of my comfort zone a little bit. So I do want to make sure I get some pink representation in there, and I want to make sure that I'm getting some green. I am not 100% sure if I will try to get the teal bluey portion of this palette in my condensed version, because I just don't really love blue eyeshadow like that. I don't need this. Oftentimes when I'm doing my eyeshadow, I have a small little palette of cream eyeshadows that are just like this available to me. That's just a regular part of it. So like I don't need this to be in my condensed version. I definitely want some of the browns in there. And what I think might make the most sense is to have this shade right here and this shade right here, so I can have something to, use as a transition and have something deeper to, use in the outer corner or like wing out a little bit. Not that there isn't other dark shades to kind of wing out, well, specifically like this green down here. But I think with these two, I can skip this one because I can mix these two and blend these two together. Having the shade would help blend those. I don't think it's like entirely necessary. So I'm going to take these two out. Whenever it comes to like this row, I'm so insanely drawn to the shade Serenity. And I think that's a special shade that I would want to keep in my version of the palette. So I'm going to take that one out. Let's check to see if these are labeled on the back. So they actually are labeled on the back, which is great. I'm not someone who bothers to like label things when I move them around because I don't care that much. But if a brand does it for me, I love that. So I actually really love this shade right here, this peony shade. And I do think that of the pinks, I would want to keep it because it's like pretty unique. I'm torn on whether or not I would want to keep this hot pink in my condensed version of the palette. I just don't know that it sings to me. And then this shade right here, it's a really cool shade. This like kind of hot pink shimmer doesn't really appeal to me. I do love a ballet pink, so this shade right here speaks to me a little bit more, but honestly, I do think that this would be the pink shimmer shade I would keep out of all of them, because this is very of what I do. I feel like something like this shows up in a lot of shades that I tend to buy. If I'm buying singles, it tends to be a shade that I'm kind of like very into if it shows up in a palette. So I think that's something I want to hold off on. If I don't have enough shades or if I want to add more, that would be a shade I would consider. And then I might take this pink as well. When you look at these, actually, this shade right here is like a little bit corally, And then this shade's a little bit purpley. And so like this is more corally, and then this one's more purpley. So like these are kind of like the two that go together. These are the two that go together when it comes to that kind of pink vibe. Maybe I should take this like hot coral if I'm gonna keep it in the pink family. So I have 6 shades so far, and I still have 2 more rows to go. I'm taking that into consideration as I continue to go. If I want to go to 12, I'll allow myself to go to 12, but I'm kind of sort of trying to keep it to 10. When I look at this row, I really love this green. And I mean, this palette has a lot of greens in it, even though I'm typically attracted to greens. I feel like I don't wear them that much actually in reality. So I am just kind of like, I'm just thinking that that would be what I would take. Now, we have like a jeweled multi-chrome here with this shade. And I have a lot of this in my makeup collection. I have a lot of Cleona eyeshadows. And this kind of shade doesn't really like, I'm not going to lie and say I don't like these kinds of shades anymore. But it's not as intriguing to me as something like flaky, like this shade here, which has a lot of texture. And I have like another flakier shade. I don't know. When it comes to the green shimmer, I think that if I'm gonna pick one of the multi-chromes, I probably would pick, but that's a little more blue. So what is the truth, Ellen? What is the truth? I'm trying to figure that out. So let's swatch this shade right here. Okay, actually, I think I'm gonna take this shade up here, and I also really like this shade here. And then when it comes to this bottom row, I certainly love this matte. So I'm going to take that. And you know what? I can use that brown to deepen out any of those shades that I've just taken. So I'm not sure I really like super need this deep brown. And right now I have 10 shades. Let me show you the eyeshadow palette that I've made. I think I might want to add more. I'm not committed to this arrangement of them, by the way, but you can see I chose a lot of the lighter colors, which is interesting. It's interesting because I don't typically like pastels. I think oftentimes pastels kind of feel straightforward, and I do think that there's something a little bit fun about these. And then I kind of have like my khaki situation over here where it's like kind of camo inspired colors. I do feel as though I am lacking shimmers. So like I only have these 3 shimmers right now, and then I have so many mattes. I have like 7 mattes. So if I up it to 12, I could take 2 shimmers to add to this. I think I will add my Ballet Pink. This is one of those eyeshadows that has holographic flakes in it. For some reason in this shade, it doesn't bother me as much as I've experienced it in other shades. But actually, maybe I don't want that one. I do feel as though I have my pinks. I don't have any teals, but that was like kind of like, I was just kind of avoiding the teals. And I know I like that shade. I mean, the spirit of the palette is that it does have these multi-chromes in it. And I, you know, in my condensed version, I don't know that I necessarily like need that. I'm also tempted to take this brown in. I still think my reasoning for not taking it does stand. But, and I do think if I picked any of these purples, I don't know that it would really like go with the thematics that I have going here. I am thinking maybe this one. This is interesting because if you would have told me at the beginning that this is what this palette would look like outside of the container, because you know, it does make a difference whenever you don't have like the black background. I like didn't think of these shades as that light until they were out of there. So I'm just kind of taking that in. But I do think, because I feel like I have to make it an even number. I think I can't make an 11 pan palette. It's gotta be this one. So my heart keeps singing to. Again, these jeweled multi-chromes, I have them from another brand. So when I'm building my own palette or like when I'm condensing this palette, I just feel like I wouldn't need that. Like I don't need that for my palette because of my collection. So this, if this was my perfect version of this palette, it wouldn't have those multi-chromes in it, just for my sake. So yeah, so there are 25 shades in here and I just cut it down to 12. And now I'm gonna do an eyeshadow look with them. So we will see how that turns out. Let me show you the palette I'm putting them in. So one of my subscribers sent me this a while ago, and it's like this old Lucky Strike tin. It's pretty cool, and they put this like magnetic thing in the bottom so you can use it as a magnetic palette. It's not the most like sturdy palette, like the magnet's not super strong, so I can't really use it for travel or anything, but it is fun to make custom palettes with it. So I think I am going to be like boring Bessie and kind of like keep my neutrals kind of all together. And I think I'm going to do 4 rows of 3. And then maybe I can kind of build them like columns for myself. No, let's move those down. And I'm going to put that one there. So this is my new little palette. So very exciting. And now I'm going to make an eyeshadow look with it. What I will say is this definitely makes it much more approachable for me, this color story. I think I've said this before, but like this is not an eyeshadow palette I would have bought had the brand not sent it to me. I don't know if I'm more excited looking at this. Like I am kind of really excited to see this shade in it and then like this kind of row and then some of the greens, but this column, it doesn't really sing to me, but I think in a condensed version of the palette, the pink still needs to be there. Now I could have gone the purple route, but I do think the pinks call to me a little bit more than the purples. So that's how we ended up with that. I primed my eyes with the NARS Smudge Proof eyeshadow base, and then I set it with a cream shadow. This is the little palette that has some cream shadows in it that I was talking about earlier. That I was like, I don't need that cream shadow because I've been working on this. Here is my little palette. Oh, it's so cute. It looks so better. Looks better. Looks better than I remember it looking. It's like a cute little pastel shimmer palette. I'm gonna try to get a little bit of everything here. So some brown, some pink, some green in some capacity. So let's get into it. So I am gonna take the lightest brown shade and use it as a transition shade. If you follow my channel with any kind of interest, I have been testing Rephr brushes, but I really got so fed up with them recently that I was like, I need to move on to a different brand. So I probably will, I'm not sure when I will do my Rephr brush review, but that will be coming sooner rather than later because I really was having a time. Also, this shade is actually like a lot lighter than I think I thought it was. So this works even better for a transition shade. So I'm working on BK Beauty right now. I don't love their eyeshadow brushes either, if I'm being quite honest with you. But I don't have enough sizes, so I'm going to need to make a purchase from them to like round out my collection. I could try reaching out for PR, but I would feel bad about that because well, I don't know why I feel bad about that, but it's how I feel. So one thing I really actually like about the browns in the Secret Garden palette is they're kind of like yucky. They're like, I mean, some people just think brown eyeshadow is yucky. Well, some people think brown, the color is yucky, which is like just the wrong opinion. Brown is so beautiful. We should love it more. Because I love brown lipstick. I was out with my friend Kristen over the weekend, and she was like, I just hate brown cosmetics. And I said, it's the wrong opinion. Brown eyeshadow, brown lipstick, brown cosmetics is really where it's at. So I have this, like, this khaki green. I think I should say this somewhere else in the video, but in case I don't, if I haven't said this elsewhere in the video, I'm gonna edit this in here. It is not important for you to know the specific shades I'm using because the goal here is to inspire you to use what you have. First and foremost, yes, I did take all of these colors from the palette directly, but as you saw, like the palette itself is not perfect for me because it has too many eyeshadows. So if you have something that looks similar to that, that's what you should use if you're like following along at home. You don't need this exact one. So I'm gonna take this like, you know, khaki green shade and I'm just gonna kind of like sweep it over very lightly over that brown shade as like a secondary transition, like in the exact same place, but I'm not trying to pick up too much pigment. Do you see how it just made it a little bit greener than it is on this side? That's kind of just what I was looking for. Do I know really where I'm headed with this eyeshadow look? No, that's the beauty of life. Last night I went to a comedy show. It was Michelle Collins, who I love her. I was so glad she took her tour to Pittsburgh because she lives in Amsterdam now. So I was just like, there's no way she's going to go on tour and come to Pittsburgh. And it was really cool. I was really excited about it. She asked me what I did for a living because I was sitting in the front row. And I like laughed at something I shouldn't have, and she just like came running over to me. She's like, "You bitch." She was like, "What do you do for a living?" And I said, "I'm a YouTuber." And she did not even bat an eyelash. She knew, she believed it. And that made me feel really great. Now I'm gonna take that like pinky coral shade. I've been using the same brush this whole time. I'm not getting into detail work yet, so this brush is fine. And remember whenever we all used to just put like a random color right in the front of our, right here, like where our brow would start? Well, my brow's not there anymore, but like where your brow would start, that's what I'm doing with it. I might bring in more pink to this look. I haven't decided, but I know I want to do a little bit there. I want to build that up a little bit more. I'm very into that. Okay, now I'm going to take a different brush. I am not going to be using a BK brush for this. I'm going to switch to one of my old beloved Wayne Goss brushes. And I want a more defined crease. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tap into the dark brown and the light brown and kind of go back and forth to make like my own mid-tone brown. Just blend that up in there. And then pull it up, kind of wingy. Even though this isn't my full-time job, I felt like I wasn't gonna tell you my real job. Not like out of secrecy or anything like that, but like my real job is boring. This job is not boring. But I also was like then nervous when I said that. I was like, oh God, I hope we're not gonna have to have a conversation about this. And we didn't. We didn't have to do that, and that was nice. Tiff was supposed to go with me, and they were supposed to go away this weekend. It was like this whole thing, and then Tiff ended up not going, but I still went with the person that I invited instead of Tiff. That was a refer brush that I just used. I just lied to you. That's a refer brush. I don't know why it's in that container because you shouldn't be there. Anyway, I took him, and I wasn't sure if he was gonna like find the comedy funny because like I feel like Michelle's style of comedy is pretty specific. But he was tee-hee-heeing and we were tee-hee-heeing and it was a very fun time. I had such a good time. Okay, now I'm actually gonna be switching to a Wayne Goss brush. And I'm gonna go into my darker green and I'm just gonna see if that's gonna be deep enough to hold its own. Yeah, I think that should be fine. Kind of keeping it on the outer third of the eye here. I didn't shave my eyebrows today for you. I'm sorry, I just like didn't feel like it. Also, I feel like my skin was pretty sensitized after shaving my face yesterday. And I was just like, we're not gonna risk it. We're not gonna risk it for the biscuit. Why is this side so much darker? What happened? I'm gonna dip into the dark brown and into the green and try to like get this side to match. I don't know what I did to deserve such a thing when I'm doing a close-up eyeshadow video. Why would it do that to me? Like, why would it choose violence in such a way? I do think I want to get a little bit of that hot pink. I'm whacking off as much as I can. And I do want to put it like right at the front of the coral. I just want a little bit more. I like the way it looked. And if you're playing at home, you could have just stopped there. But I like kind of bring it down the nose a little bit too. Like a half nose, hot pink contour. Maybe I don't like that. Maybe I don't like that. I changed my mind. I like it. I don't like it. Like, I like it up here, but I don't like it going down my nose. So, just taking what's left of my foundation brush and kind of like tapping it in. So I have like a little bit of a pink stain from the eyeshadow, but that's okay. Someone called Natalie and Bruglia. I'm torn because I love this shade. Like, this shade is my favorite. So I do think I want to put that like from here to here. And then I might take one of the pinks all the way to the inner corner. I mean, you can't really give me feedback in this time. I gotta say, a silicone applicator for applying shimmers, especially flaky shimmers, I've learned has been like the way. It's the way. Now, a lot of the shimmers from bellabeautebar are like pretty soft and kind of fragile. Like when you press this into them, it kind of gives more than you would want it to. But I mean, undeniably, look at the way that applied. I feel like it takes the flakies and it smooths them out really well. And maybe I don't have that Danessa Myricks, those chrome flakes, but I feel like this would be a really great way to apply those. I feel like when people play with those, they always kind of get hung up on like how to apply them. I don't know. I just think that our silicone applicator is the way, the truth, and the light, because that's how it feels to me. Like, I think this is the future of drag. It has nothing to do with drag, but it's the future of drag. You know what I mean? I think I'm going to take this shade, the one that I almost didn't put in the palette, and I'm going to put that on the inner portion of the lid, into the inner corner, kind of like blend it into the green. I'm going to take my ring finger in. My ring finger, my pinky finger, kind of like blend those two together. Oh, take me, no. That's the look. I'm gonna put on some eyeliner. I'm gonna put on some mascara. I'm gonna zoom out and we're gonna wrap this video up. I have Illusion by Dula stuck in my head, Dula Peep. And you know what's so funny about that is I feel like I don't know a single gay person that actually refers to her as Dua Lipa anymore. I'm sure she feels some kind of way about that. It's iconic. Where did it go? Where did it go? Baby, where's that? Where is it? Where I... Jesus Christ. So we went from 25 shades to 12. And I mean, I don't feel like I'm missing anything from here. I know I really avoided those turquoise shades, but they are just not for me. But look at how cute. First of all, I mean, a round of applause for the cigarette Z palette. Look at my little palette. Look at how petite. And then look at look at how intense it was in here. That wraps up the video. So I just want to say thank you again to bellabeautebar for sending me this palette. I really appreciate it. This was by no means to speak of the quality of this eyeshadow palette. This was really to use as a demonstration as to why I prefer a smaller color story, because even though we had 12 shades, I used quite a few of them. Let me count how many I used actually. I used 8 of the 12 shades actually. And then that's like most of the palette that I used in the look. But then if you think about 8 out of 25 shades, it's like not the same. I do think that bellabeautebar's eyeshadow formula is really, really stellar quality. It's one of my favorite indie brand eyeshadows. Their mattes are like really the best mattes I've used from an indie brand, I think, ever. And I really like the impact of their sparkly shades and their shiny shades. My only like criticism about some of their shades is sometimes they can be a little thick, a little bit fragile. They have a really beautiful outcome. They're just a little bit different than other eyeshadow formulas, which isn't necessarily bad. It's just like something to know when you're going into it. I do have a code with bellabeautebar. It's hautemesstom. It will save you 10% on anything at the store. I have an affiliate link down below if you're interested in buying anything. That's not to say that you need to buy anything or should buy anything. If you are really interested in this palette or anything that else they have, I think they are good quality, but you probably already have a lot of eyeshadow, so if this isn't going to add anything to your collection, then it's, you know, it's not a necessary thing. I do think that their palettes going forward are going to be magnetic, so you can think of them as singles too. That's something to keep in mind as well. Like, you know, what I was able to do today, there are just some brands you wouldn't be able to do that with. So that's really cool, and I hope that they continue to do that because that's really great. If you think about it like that and you need some single eyeshadows and you want to think of them that way, it could be a good way to get your hands on a bunch of them. With single shadows, I still think buying individual eyeshadows is the way to go, simply because it helps keep you in check about like what shades you're going to actually use if you're being really picky about it, which is what I recommend. All that being said, thank you so much for watching this video. If you haven't caught the vibe of what we do here, what I like to do is try to help myself and help you be more discerning about the makeup that we're purchasing and just kind of taking a look at things. So like, for example, in today's video, in case you didn't take away the lesson, I'm overwhelmed by really big eyeshadow palettes. So this wouldn't have been something that I would have bought. So like editing it down was really an activity in being like, okay, like what would the eyeshadow that I would want that would look like this might look like? As opposed to like, do I really need all 25 eyeshadows? So if you didn't catch that was the lesson. So if you're into that kind of thing, I would love to have you stick around. I talk about new makeup releases and I get really sassy about it, but I really try to focus on loving my makeup collection first and foremost before purchasing something to scratch an itch that I can probably already scratch with the makeup I have. I'm on Patreon and I have channel memberships. You don't have to join both. You don't have to join either. You should just join one or the other if you are going to join one. because it's the same thing. You get the same benefits no matter which one you join. I do some additional content over there. I need to update the weekly playlist. I say that right now. Thank you all to my current members and patrons. You're so fabulous. And I think I gotta go because my brain is not working anymore. Remember to follow your hope and you will find me. I'll see you in a video very soon. Go for it. Tits, tits out.